Well, earlier I spoke to Paul Zahra, the Chief Executive of David Jones, about his results. Paul Zahra, welcome to Lateline Business.
Thank you. Well,
these are pretty stellar results that have come in despite all the discounting. What do you put it down to?
Look, the prior profit result at plus 9.1% is actually within our the upper end of our guidance. We're really pleased with our result. The profit has actually really come from, partly from revenue, from sales, and the other part from our cost of doing business programs that have actually delivered a stellar result.
Much of the gains you mentioned are because of the cuts that you've made to the cost of doing business. They've come in ahead of your strategic plan, I think. Just how much more room have you got on the cost-cutting front, to use it as an engine for growth?
Sure. Well, we see it much more around cost efficiency as opposed to cost cutting. And in fact, since 2003, our CADB program has actually delivered year-on-year decreases to our overall cost structure. We have a fairly high cost of doing business, so it allows us, we've got room to move. And in fact, we are ahead of our 09 to 12 plan, and we've given guidance for both fiscal 11 and fiscal 12 to reduce our CADB program by another 10 to 20 basis points. So
gross profits were down in your second half. Myer didn't seem to suffer the same problems. Why do you think that was?
Our GP margins were down. It was predominantly in that last quarter as most retailers tried to anniversarise the government stimulus package. And, in fact, what we saw was the discounting was deeper and wider, and we had to compete. But that did allow us to end up with the season fairly clean, and we're actually moving into this fiscal year. We've got our age inventory profile is less than 5%, so we're starting the season off well from an inventory perspective, which is what we're really proud of.
Myer is now very much back in the game as a serious competitor again. Is there room for both of you to grow in the way that you say you're going to? Because the department store sector as a whole isn't growing, is it?
Well, not the way we see it, because I think, Myer's results were good for them. And in fact, I think what that shows is for the first, as were our results, by the way, so I think for the first time it's showing that both department stores can survive. I think in the first time ever, what's clear for me and from a market perspective is that both department stores can win with two very different strategies. Ours is certainly around that being the house of brands in high value, high growth locations, and Myer have actually pursued a different strategy that is working for them. Is really around private label and going into much more regional locations. So I think it's great for the sector.
We've just had the Global Department Store Summit in New York, and out of that, of course, came the fact that service is key. Now, I know David Jones prides itself on service, but there are still those anecdotal stories of being in a DJ store and not being able to find any staff to help you, particularly in this time of discounting.
Service is always a challenge for retailers. Getting consistency of service is always a challenge. We do many customer satisfaction surveys that actually measure our service in our stores versus Myer, and what I can say is the gap between David Jones and Myer is consistent, and it's large. So I can understand why Myer would be seeing that as an opportunity to invest.
But of course, presumably the solution is really putting on more staff, and then that adds to costs.
Well, that's true, and in fact, it depends on the way you see it, because service is complex, because it's not just about the quantity of staff, but of course it's the quality of staff. And in fact, our service heritage, the quality of the people that work in our business will be something for other retailers to aspire to.
You talked a lot today about the model's success over the last 7 years since 2003. Of course, that was when Mark McInnes, your predecessor, arrived. Should he be given much of the credit for this turnaround? Sure.
Look, my presentation today was actually on the fiscal 10 results. It certainly were not my personal results. They're a result of not only the current management committee, which I have been a part of for the last 12 years, but also the result of our 10,000 employees that do the hard work to actually deliver on our consistent, not only this fiscal year result, but in making David Jones a continued success story.
But McInnes led that ship, didn't he?
He left the shift back in 2003, and absolutely. And, the management team that are currently in place worked as a team to deliver these results.
How has David Jones now been affected by the sexual harassment case, and what sort of contingencies have you made?
Sure. Look, that's a difficult one to probably describe, but I do think there are two fundamental indicators. And, you know, the share price is one indicator, and in fact, other than the day of the announcement, the share price has continued in line with the market. The other indicator for me actually was really sales, and in fact about customers, and particularly women, where they chose still to shop with us.
And contingencies?
Well, we've provided for, in our accounts for last fiscal year, what we'd say is a reasonable amount, but, you know, we're not disclosing that number, and I don't plan to discuss that case. Given that legal proceedings have commenced, it would be really inappropriate for me to make any further comment.
Paul Zahra, thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure, Tiggy. Thank you.